When I come fishing, I often pass this oak tree behind me, and every year it produces a sort of goodly number of acorns, which is the fruit of the oak tree. But this year, it's gone absolutely berserk. There's tens of thousands of acorns laid all over the place. I've never seen so many. This oak tree has zillions of acorns on it. On oak forest with this. I don't know what there'll be on here. Oh, I think there's 10,000 more than. It's a sizable tree. They're all over the road, hundreds of thousands of them. Everywhere, acorns. There are zillions of them in this field. If you look at them closely, lots of them have a little hole in. See them there? Obviously something's laid an egg in there, and it's the insect hatched out, ate the inside and has emerged. I'll take a couple of these home, see what's in them, if anything. Probably nothing. But you'll also be interested to know what proportion of these acorns have this little hole in. So you see some bug inside. Something's laid its egg inside the acorn when it's small. And when the bug has matured, it drills a little hole in the case and comes out. Anyway, I'll just collect up several hundred of these things in a carrier bag and take them home and see what percentage of them are infested with this pest. And this is the creature itself, acorn weevil. A characteristic of all weevils is this long thing called a nostrum, and the acorn weevil has the longest of all relative to its size, this great big long thing here. And at the end of it, I hold that steady, is its mouth, which it uses to drill holes in young acorns. And bizarrely, it's got these two antennae attached to this thing called a rostrum. What an amazing thing. You can see the hole that the adult weevil has drilled right through the young acorn cup into the acorn itself before it's begun to develop. It's a very common insect in the south of England and indeed on the continent, in fact all over Europe, where there are oak trees. But the most northerly sighting in this country, which I can find, was just down the road at this place here, Sunbeck Wood, and it was recorded there in 2019. And that's not very far from where this oak tree is, which is just on the side of the road going up to Fordington. And if I zoom out, I find that there have only been 3 sightings in North Yorkshire. That isn't to say there aren't lots of them about. Fascinating. Well, it's a windy day and it's absolutely raining acorns. Yeah, I'm clattering into the ground as I'm standing here. I haven't been hit by one yet. Collected a few of these late falling acorns and see if they've still got this acorn weevil problem. It's been whacked by one. The freshly fallen acorns, because they when they've been attached to the tree, it's quite light. It very quickly goes dark once it's off. So it'll be interesting to see how many of these are infested with this, the larvae of this acorn weevil. I can only see one in this box. So I think there are hundreds still to come off this tree. Every time you get a big gust of wind, it starts raining down, bouncing off the road. So this is the first drop of these acorns from this tree, divided into these which have contain the acorn weevil and these which don't. I'm quite surprised that the first impressions I got was it was about 50-50, but you can see there it's nowhere near 50-50. I suspect it's because when you first look on the ground, the ones with the little holes in it, they're so obvious. And what's even more incredible is most of them seem to come out at the sort of midpoint, the equator, if you like, of the acorn. I mean, how does this little acorn weevil larva, how does it know where that is? I mean, you could count the acorns and you can work out the proportion which have the infestation and those which don't. But there are better things to do. Anyway, let's have a look at the second drop. That windy day when I was there, and see what proportions we get there. Well, these are the acorns from the second drop. These are the ones without any acorn weevil larvae in them. Let's have a look at those with the holes in. There aren't any. All the ones with the acorn weevil larvae in, they seem to come off first, which is not surprising really. So, and all the ones without the acorn weevil larvae, they hang on for another few days. Interesting. The weevils insert their eggs into young acorns at the beginning of the summer, when the young acorns are just beginning to develop. And they lay up to about 50 eggs, so that's probably 50 acorns. And the larvae, which hatch out from the egg, they eat the inside of the acorn. And they drill their way out of the acorn in the autumn, when the acorn falls off the tree. And the ones with larvae in are usually the first acorns to fall. And the larvae emerge from the acorn within hours of the acorn being on the ground. I mean, what triggers this emergence, you know? You don't want to be, if you're a larvae, you don't want to be trolling out of your acorn, peeling out and suddenly realising you're still 50 feet above the ground. That would be a bit of a disaster for the species anyway. I mean, is it the fall? Do they feel the fall, or is it the thwack when the acorn clatters into the ground? Is that what triggers it? The emergence? I don't know. Someone will know somewhere. And then having emerged, they then very quickly, before they get picked up by birds, they very quickly bury themselves into the soil where they pupate. And they stay in this resting stage for, up to 3 years before they work their way up to the surface and emerge as a spanking new acorn weevil. The acorns and beech nuts lying on the ground are called mast. And every 5 or 10 years, the trees produce zillions of them, a huge glut of acorns and beech nuts. And these are called mast years. And seemingly it's not just confined to one tree or one small area, but the whole country, indeed, sometimes it's the whole continent. I mean, how does this come about? I mean, there's some evidence that trees can communicate with one another through their roots or the release of chemicals from their leaves, especially when they've been attacked by some kind of pest. But it's a big stretch of your imagination to think that this could happen between trees miles apart, between sort of Yorkshire and Devon. It's much more likely to do with the weather. When the flowers are being pollinated by the wind in the springtime, I think anyway. And the tree, having produced this glut of acorns during this mast year, the following year, having exhausted its resources, it produces very few acorns, which is not very good for young little furry creatures on the ground, the voles and the mice that eat the acorns and stash them away for the winter time. There'll be a lot fewer of those, and as a consequence there'll be a lot less food for young barn owls. The big advantage of these mast years is that voles and mice and other small hairy creatures have a huge hoard, a great stash for the winter time. And so they come through the winter really well, and more of them. And of course, being fit, having eaten all these acorns, they produce large litters. And so in the year after a mast year, there are huge numbers of voles and mice. And of course, they in turn are food for carnivorous birds in the main, owls and kestrels, and indeed things like stoats and weasels. So they all do particularly well, especially barn owls. Most birds lay their eggs and then don't sit on them until there's a full clutch. So if they lay 5 eggs, they don't sit on them until they've got 5. So all the eggs hatch at the same time. Now barn owls are different. They sit on the egg right from the very first one that's laid, and they can lay up to 7. So the 7th egg, when that hatches, that chick's a week younger than its the number 1 egg, the first of the siblings. And if there isn't enough food coming in, poor years for voles and mice, the first hatched siblings, being the biggest, they weigh up the smaller, weaker siblings as a potential meal. And if there isn't enough food coming in, they'll start weighing them up. and will, as these siblings get weaker, they'll eventually eat them to survive. So in bad fall years, the number of barn owls surviving to fledge the nest is very small. Sometimes there's none, but occasionally one or two get away from a nest. But after mast years, when you get masses of falls, the number of barn owl chicks surviving increases dramatically. So, hopefully this barn owl, which I see when I'm out fishing, hopefully next year it will raise a big brood on this surplus of voles and mice. Anyway, for those who might be interested, if you spread acorns out on a tray like this, you will see these grubs crawling about, and you can pick them and eat them, fry them in butter. I don't fancy it myself somehow. There you can see them ready for cooking.